President Biden with world leaders at the G20 summit this week. He used detailed notes to instruct him on where to sit, when to speak, how to pose for photos. Those so-called cheat sheets are actually pretty standard at events like the G20, but Biden's always generate a lot of attention among Republicans who say that voters are just not confident he should run, that should he run again in 2024, he'll actually fulfill a second term. Fox's own voter analysis found that 58% of voters don't believe he can serve effectively moving forward. One former Clinton strategist says even some Democrats have some big-time doubts. Listen to this.
He'd be 86 at the end of a so-called second term. I don't know if he's going to make it to the end of this term in terms of he's already, shaking hands with people that aren't there, calling out congresswomen who are dead, confusing Cambodia with Colombia. I mean, he's been a president who's done things. He too would, I think, be doing service to America by stepping aside and letting Democrats choose a second-generation leader.
So far, 22 other Democrats have refused to say whether they would actually like to see the president run for re-election. A couple of them have even said, flat out, please don't. Let's bring in Rob Smith. He's president of the Douglas Society, deputy editor Off the Press. Also, Scott Bolden, former D.C. Democratic Party chairman. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me. Rob, let's go to you first. The president's supporters say cheat sheets, schmeat sheets. Every president uses this kind of stuff. Biden is no exception.
Yeah, well, I think his supporters will be wrong. And I'll tell you something, Jillian. So when you look at all of these different things, when you look at the cheat sheets that we see over and over again, when you look at him sort of wandering off at the White House Easter egg hunt and having to be put back on course by the Easter Bunny, when you see him walking off stage, when you see him shaking hands with people that are not there, when you see him telling journalists that, oh, I'm supposed to call on you, but I'm not supposed to call on you, it really gives the sense to voters that this is somebody that is not only not in control, but somebody that is being controlled. And even in these sort of tightly controlled atmospheres, because I'll give the Biden administration one thing, they are tightly controlled as to how the president is seen by most people. These are situations when you go into him running for president again, possibly in 2024, that are not going to be as tightly controlled. There will be more gaffes, there will be more stuff like this, and there's going to be a bigger spotlight on them. And I think that the people that do not want Biden to run know this. None other than Michelle Obama, probably the most popular Democrat on earth, kind of, hemmed and hawed a little bit when she was asked whether or not he should run again. So I think that a lot of people are realizing that this is maybe not the route they should go in 2024, and that's even Democrats.
Scott, is the party comfortable with, okay with the president's recent gaffes on the world stage?
Every president has had gaffes on the world stage and national stage.
They have, but they don't often, just to be fair, they don't often conflate the names of countries separated by, more than half of planet Earth.
Well, they probably shouldn't, but it happens. I'm a trial lawyer, and I conflate names all the time. I have cheat sheets when I talk to a jury. When I managed 100 lawyers for Reed Smith, I also made sure that we did not want to make mistakes. He's on the world stage, if you will. Why shouldn't he have a cheat sheet? Now, if age is an issue, the issue should be, is he able to do the job? So far, he's been able to do the job and been beating the GOP at every corner, so he's got some wins. But if he's incapable of doing the job, right, then that's fair assessment. Otherwise, I'd hate to discriminate against him because of his age, because we're all getting older.
And this is really, the story of cheat sheets is really a story about confidence, right? Does his own party across the board have confidence in his ability and his capability moving forward? Rob, it doesn't seem like they do.
I've got to jump in and I've got to say that the Republicans winning back the House.
Get Rob in here real quick. We'll come back to you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, getting Republicans back into the House, Republicans just took back the House, I don't see that as Biden beating the GOP at every corner. I see them as taking a victory lap because they didn't get beat as badly as they expected to get beat last week.
Well, the cheat sheets are one thing, but his capabilities are another. It's not a matter of confidence. Yeah. It's a matter of does he have the stamina, quite frankly, to even do another campaign? And he's 80 years old. That's fair. But if he's 80 years old and can do the job, I don't think it's an unfair hit to say, well, because he's got these gaffes and stuff, that somehow he's not capable. Because he's very capable. He's in office right now, and he's getting things done, and even the GOP can't disagree with that.
Gentlemen, let's move on to this. Republicans have retaken the House, obviously. One moderate Democrat now is furious at the far left wing of the party. That's Oregon Congressman Kurt Schrader, who lost his primary to a progressive in May. That candidate went on to lose the seat to a Republican in a district that went for President Biden by 9 points. Schrader tells the Washington Post, quote, "We are leaving the center wide open for Republicans. We got to be a bigger tent party." The piece goes on to say President Biden's party had its own problems with what everyone calls candidate quality. The difference is that unlike Republicans, Democrats aren't ready to talk about it. New Hampshire's Republican Governor Chris Sununu weighed in with this.
We have all this other national stuff happening that I think scared a lot of folks, this extremism that's out there. And that's what this was. This was just a rejection of that extremism. I don't think anyone likes the policies out of D.C. No one likes paying, $6 for a gallon of heating oil, especially with winter coming. But what I think people said was, look, we can work on these policies later, but as Americans, we got to fix extremism right now.
Scott, you're up first this time.
Yeah, I think Sununu is absolutely right. The extreme left and the extreme right scare the middle, and most Americans are moderates. In fact, you all covered Democrats, far left extremists a lot more than the core of the party. They're just not as vocal. And so quality candidates are important.
We don't cover them more, to be fair, Scott. We cover what they say. And when those riffs become laid bare and the mainstream media is picking them apart.
And moderates simply don't engage in that or don't speak like that or speak as often. So that's a fair comeback to me. But the reality is that moderates make up this country, and quality candidates matter on both sides, if you will. And the white conservative Democrats or the white working class haven't voted for a Democratic president to put in the White House since LBJ. And so the Democratic Party's got to figure out, sure, we should have a big tent and what have you, and we need white working class voters, but are they going to come back, or do we focus on our base of black and brown and gay voters and women voters? It's a real challenge for the Democratic Party.
I need to make sure, sorry to interrupt, got to make sure we get Robin before we leave. Are white working class voters going back to the Democrats?
White working class voters are never going back to Democrats, but I will say that the Republicans and the GOP need to do a good job at getting to that white voter base. So let me tell you something right now. The far left extremism among the Democrat Party is not something that's ended. When you think about the Justice Democrats, now this is the group that endorsed AOC,
we got it, gentlemen. I'm sorry to cut you off. We're coming up against a hard break here. Rob and Scott, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll get you both back. Thanks for watching.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.